Matt, what is your ideal monitor refresh rate money as an object?
165 hertz.
I'm going to say 240.
165 hertz, that's all you need.
Now, I bet you have seen videos like this before, where all of these famous YouTubers talk about how a high refresh rate monitor is a must-have if you want to call yourself a real PC gamer. But the thing is, I don't believe them. So, because I have used a 60Hz monitor my entire gaming life, so I have decided to buy a high refresh rate display to see if it's worth upgrading or if you should save up for a new GPU or an OLED display instead. But before I want to get in the full review, I want to say that I'm not a competitive gamer. Mostly I play single player games. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into the full review. Now, the monitor I've had before the new one was a business monitor from Fujitsu. And when I first got it, it was really good. The colors were a lot better than on my old one, and that was a 1080p monitor that was really old. Like, old as fuck. I think it was like 10 years old or something. And I've used it for about 2 years by now. My new one. My 1440p Fujitsu display. And as I upgraded to a 5070 Ti, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna upgrade my display alongside with it. So I got my hands on a 180Hz display. Now since I've used it for about 3 months now, and with my 60Hz monitor right next to it, I came to a clear conclusion. Well, not really. The story is a lot more complex. Now, is a high refresh rate monitor gonna blow your mind completely? Like you have entered heaven itself? No. Does it feel better in a lot of ways and is a quality of life upgrade? Absolutely. You can see here where I scrolled through YouTube, the 60Hz display is on the right and the 80Hz display is on the left. And you can clearly see that the right display clearly has less of a smooth image when motion is in place. The right monitor just lags a little bit behind. But now let's get into the real world and test it in gaming. I have tested 3 games in total. The first game was Doom 2016. I chose this game for a couple of reasons. It's pretty old by now, which means it's gonna give me a high refresh rate without any features like DLSS or frame generation that straight outright just add latency and would ruin my review. And second, it's a fast-paced single-player shooter, which means I'm moving a lot, so the differences are gonna be more clear to see than let's say in other games like Cyberpunk 2077. I played it first with the 60Hz display and then with the 180Hz, and then I went back to the 60Hz again, so that I kinda see the difference better. 3 times is a pretty good number for testing. And the first thing that I noticed was with the 60Hz display, the image was a bit more, kinda like with the YouTube scrolling, it was a bit more hanging behind. Which was a lot better on the 180Hz display, of course, because I was getting like 200 FPS in Doom 2016. But if you're used to a 60Hz monitor and never seen anything else, you're not gonna notice it on your 60Hz monitor that the image is a little bit washed out, because you don't know that it can be better, which means if you don't know that it's better and have a monitor side by side or used a 60Hz monitor in the past and then upgraded, you're not gonna notice it. It's not like when your GPU gets outdated, you see this in FPS in new games, but your monitor, you're not gonna see it really, you know? And that's a thing that I would like to point out because it's not as clear of an upgrade as when you upgrade your GPU, because when you upgrade your GPU, you straight up get better FPS. If you were getting 40 FPS or even less in the newer releases, and then upgrade your GPU, you're clearly getting an uplift that you can notice, you know? Because you noticed a lag of performance with your previous GPU. But with your monitor, that's not really the case, because you can't really compare it side by side. Because if you have a monitor, you kind of stick to it and get used to it, and you don't like look at it and see that's significantly worse, and a new GPU is gonna fix that. You see that with FPS. But with your monitor, you're not seeing it. You're not seeing that feels bad now because my game's getting outdated. The second game I wanted to test was Echo Point Nova. I chose this game because it's a lot more fast-paced than Doom 2016, so that I kinda see the differences even stronger, so that I can better determine if the upgrade is worth it. And with this game, the differences got even more visible, mainly because of the very fast movement. If you do a flick shot or something, you're definitely seeing the difference and feeling the difference of the two monitors a lot. So if you're playing games where you need to do flick shots or quick scoping a lot more often, and enemy visibility is very important because you also, with a higher refresh rate monitor, you kind of see the enemies better when you're in motion than with a 60Hz monitor. So if you're playing a lot of Counter-Strike or something, then a high refresh rate monitor is definitely worth getting. But only if I said competitive games are what you play the most. Now the last game on our list is Cyberpunk 2077. I wanted to choose Cyberpunk 2077 because it's a single player game. It's much more aligned with the rest of the games that I play, because with these type of games you focus much more on visual fidelity instead of raw FPS, which means you're not gonna see the differences as much, and that's why I wanted to play it, just to point out that the differences if you play single player from a low refresh rate monitor to a high refresh rate one are very little, because you're not getting that much FPS in a single player game in the first place. Like, if you're lucky in Cyberpunk, when you almost max it out, you can get 60 if you have a very high-end GPU like I have, but you're not gonna shoot above 100 FPS so that you can actually see, because if you're only getting 60 FPS in game, you're only gonna see 60 FPS. Doesn't matter if you have a 180Hz monitor or a 60Hz monitor. That doesn't matter, because your game is running at a certain FPS. Now frame generation can fix that, because, well, to some extent, frame generation ruins your latency, but with frame generation in motion the image gets a little bit clearer. And that's what I noticed when I played Cyberpunk 2077. The pros of a high refresh rate monitor are just almost not visible in Cyberpunk 2077. It's a completely different world if you play games where you're not getting a high refresh rate to begin with. And that's what I like to point out. You don't see as much of a difference in single player titles. And now let's jump to my conclusion. Should you buy a high refresh rate monitor? Like I said, the answer is not really a yes or a no, it's very situation specific. And like, if you're building your first gaming PC setup from the ground up, like a PC is that you need to build, a monitors that you need to buy fresh, you don't have any that you have lying around, then I would recommend you buying a high refresh rate monitor like a 120 or 144Hz display. And there it doesn't really matter if you're a competitive player or not, because the price difference of these is not really that high. You know, you can get a good 60Hz 1440p monitor for like €100, and you can get a 144Hz display for like 120 or 130. So the price difference is basically nothing, and then you can take these quality of life upgrades easily with you, because it's not gonna ruin your budget or anything. But always remember, a high refresh rate monitor doesn't change your skills. If you suck in Battlefield 6 with a 60Hz display, you're not gonna be any better with a 180Hz display. It's just not gonna happen. And the last scenario where I would say you should definitely buy a high refresh rate monitor if you have like a 5 to 10 year old office display, because these are in image quality so bad that when you buy a high refresh rate monitor, a good one, then you're not gonna get the benefits of a high refresh rate monitor, but you're also getting an uplift in your visual quality, which is a lot more worth your extra money because you get more features out of it. But there's a scenario where I'd absolutely not consider buying a high refresh rate monitor, and that would be the exact same situation that I was in, because if you already have an office display that has very good image quality and you mostly play single player games, you're not gonna notice the uplift that you're gonna get when you buy a high refresh rate monitor, because like I said with Cyberpunk 2077, you're not getting that much frames to begin with, so it's not really worth it. And that's where we'll end the video. What do you think of high refresh rate monitors? Write me your opinion down in the comments, and if you like this video and want to see more videos from my channel, then I would highly recommend that you subscribe, and see you in the next one.